The first part of this canto is rather depressing. It speaks about all these unpleasant influences that are coming to us from the lower vital. Sri Aurobindo uses the image of a theatre, a drama. And there are the directors and the scene shifters and the people who are telling us what to do. And we don't even know that we are being told what to do. We just follow their directions without being aware of that. And he says this at the bottom of page 163. He says, "This is the ephemeral creature's daily life, as long as the human animal is Lord, and a dense, never nature screens the soul, a lower nature." But then in the next page, what we read is the way that in spite of all that, some higher influences do come. And particularly, despite all our limitations, we are attracted by nature. And in nature, we find the peace that we can't find in our normal daily lives. And so I'm reading at the top of page 165. He, man, we human beings, sometimes we draw around our aching brow nature's calm, mighty hands to heal his life pain. He is saved by her silence from his rack of self. In her tranquil beauty is his purest bliss. And perhaps if we've had that experience and grown used to having that experience, that can lead us towards higher things. A new life dawns. He looks out from vistas wide. The Spirit's breath moves him, but soon retires. His strength was not made to hold that puissant guest. All dulls down to convention and routine, or a fierce excitement brings him vivid joys. His days are tinged with the red hue of strife, and lust's hot glare, and passion's crimson stain. Battle and murder are his tribal game. Time has he none to turn his eyes within and look for his lost self and his dead soul. His motion on too short an axis wheels. He cannot soar, but creeps on his long road. Or if, impatient of the trudge of time, he would make a splendid haste on fate's slow road, his heart that runs soon pants and tires and sinks. Or he walks ever on and finds no end. Hardly a few can climb to greater life. All tunes to a low scale and conscious pitch. His knowledge dwells in the house of ignorance. His force nears not even once the omnipotent. Rare are his visits of heavenly ecstasy. The bliss which sleeps in things and tries to wake breaks out in him in a small joy of life. This scanty grace is his persistent stay. It lightens the burden of his many ills and reconciles him to his little world. He is satisfied with his common, average kind. Tomorrow's hopes and his old rounds of thought, his old familiar interests and desires, he has made into a thick and narrowing hedge, defending his small life from the invisible. His being's kinship to infinity, he has shut away from him into inmost self, fenced off the greatnesses of hidden God. His being was formed to play a trivial part in a little drama on a petty stage. In a narrow plot, he has pitched his tent of life beneath the wide gaze of the starry vast. He is the crown of all that has been done. Thus is creation's labor justified. This is the world's result, nature's last poise. And if this were all, and nothing more were meant, if what now seems were the whole of what must be, if this were not a state through which we pass on our road from matter to eternal self, to the light that made the worlds, the cause of things, well might interpret our mind's limited view existence as an accident in time, illusion or phenomenon or freak, the paradox of a creative thought which moves between unreal opposites, inanimate force struggling to feel and know, matter that chanced to read itself by mind, inconscience monstrously engendering soul. So now you can read Sudarshan. A new life dawns.
A new life dawns. They look out of distance void. The spirit breath moves in, but soon retires. His strength was not made to hold a bosom again. All dull down to convention and routine. All fears, excitement with them, with joy. His days of pain with a red blue of body. Love all day, passion, guilt and pain. Battle and murder are his tribal game.
Thank you. So maybe through the influence of nature. There's a brief awakening of a new life. A new life dawns, and the range of his vision widens. He looks out from vistas wide, and he may feel moved by the breath of the Spirit. But that soon draws back. That's because as long as we are in the little life, our strength is not made to hold that puissant guest, the Spirit. So after some time, everything dulls down to its ordinary way, to convention, the way things usually are, and routine. And if that is not satisfying enough, then he searches for fierce excitements, bringing vivid joys. And that may bring clash and destruction. Then his days are tinged with the red hue of strife. Red is the color of rajas, of dynamism, but it can be dynamism that is very inharmonious. For human beings, we have to admit that it often looks as if battle and murder are our tribal game. And if we don't actually battle and murder each other, then we do it by going to football matches or other such events, boxing matches or wrestling or horse races, where there's this same intense excitement. Leila, would you read, please?
Time is none to turn aside within and look for his lost self and his dead soul. His motion on to shore and axis real. He cannot soar that creeps on his long road, or if impatient of this track of time, he would make a splendid haste on fate's slow road. His heart that frowns soon pants and tires and sinks, or he walks ever on and finds no end. Hardly if he can climb greater life.
Thank you. So if we keep ourselves fully occupied, either with routine or with the exciting things of life, we don't have enough time. We don't have the time to turn and look into our deeper selves, look for who we really are. It's as if the soul is dead. Probably it's not really dead, it's just sleeping, but it's as if it's dead. So for us human beings, our motion on two short and axis wheels, it's as if it's going around and around in circles. He can't soar like a powerful bird. He just has to creep on his long road. Or if something in him is impatient with the way things develop so slowly, if he gets some aspiration and he wants to make a faster progress, if he would make a splendid haste on fate's slow road, if he wants to speed things up, he may try to do that, but it's like when you run, unless you're really trained for running marathons, soon the heart tires and you start panting, and your energy gets less and less and less. And it may happen that we just keep on walking and we never seem to reach any goal, any end. It seems that only a very few people can rise up to a greater life. Alice, would you read?
All tunes to a low scale and conscious pitch. His knowledge dwells in the house of ignorance. His force nears not even once the omnipotent. Rare are his visits of heavenly ecstasy. The bliss which sleeps in things and tries to wake breaks out from him in a small jewel of life. This scanty grace is his persistent stead. It lightens the burden of his many ills and reconciles him to his little world.
Yes. So, of course, we are reading about the little life. And if we're under the influence of the little life, and if we haven't risen above the little life, it is like this. Everything tunes down to a low scale, very low pitch. There can be high pitches also, but not in this case. What knowledge he has is living in the house of ignorance. And his strength, his power to progress, doesn't come anywhere near omnipotence. If he has any visits of heavenly ecstasy, it happens only very rarely. This world is inhabited by bliss. The bliss is upholding everything, but it seems to be asleep. It's trying to wake up. And in us, when we're in the little life, it does break out into a small joy of life, which gives us some kind of strength and satisfaction. This small joy of life, he calls it a scanty grace. It comes to us by grace, but it's really not enough. It's something insufficient. But that's what keeps us going. This small joy of life keeps us going from day to day. This is what lightens the burden of all the troubles we have to bear, the woes and worries. This is what reconciles us to our little world, and we think we can go on living in it. Ganga Lakshmi, will you read?
He is satisfied with his unknowable element, morals, hopes, and his all plans of thought, his all familiar interest and desire. He has made into a thick and narrowing edge, defending his small life from the too visible. His wings can shift to infinity. He has shoot away from me into unlost self, hands off the greatness of hidden God.
Yes, all that routine. We are satisfied with just the way we are, our common average kind. Not too much this, not too much that. We are somehow satisfied with that low pitch. Tomorrow's hopes, our hopes for tomorrow, and our old familiar rounds of thought. All the things which we feel interested in, the things we desire, the ordinary things. These have become like a thick hedge, a thick, thorny hedge which can't be penetrated. And it's as if the hedge is getting narrower and narrower. He has less and less space. But this is what defends his small life, his little life, from the world of the invisible, which might be quite scary. All of us are closely related to infinity. We are kin to the infinite and the eternal. But we've shut that away from us, right into the deepest, most secret parts of ourselves. We've fenced it off, fenced ourselves off from the greatnesses of hidden God. It's as if our being has been formed just to play this trivial part, this small, unimportant role in the little drama of our ordinary life on this petty stage. Here we are. We live under the wide gaze of the starry vast. The vastness of space, all the myriad worlds, all the myriad stars and representing great truths. They are suns and galaxies. We see them only as tiny specks of light. And here we are. We've pitched our little tent of life. It's only big enough just to hold one person. We've pitched our little tent of life beneath the wide gaze of the starry vast. Joel.
He is the crown. He is the crown. 540.
He is the crown of all that has been done. Thus is creation's labor justified. This is the world's result, nature's last voice. And if this were all and nothing more were meant, if what now seems were the whole of what must be, if there were not the state through which we pass on our road from matter to eternal self, to the light that made the worlds, the cause of things, where it might interpret our mind's limited view, existence as an accident in time, illusion or phenomenon or freak, the paradox of a creative thought, which moves between unreal opposites, inanimate force struggling to feel and know, matter that chanced to read itself by mind, unconscious, monstrously engendering soul.
Yes. So these first few lines, it's Sri Aurobindo being ironic, no? Saying this little life, this is the crown of all that has been done. This is the best that evolution could come up with. This human creature. This is the justification for all the labor and effort that has gone into the universe. This is the result of the world. This is the last poise, the place where nature's going to stop now. And if this were all, if that were really true, and nothing more were meant than what we see today, if what now seems were indeed the whole of what is meant, what is intended for this universe, if this were not only just a stage, a passage through which we pass on our road, our long road, which leads from matter to eternal self, to the light that made the worlds, the real cause of things. If this little life were everything, in fact, then our mind's limited view would be justified. It would be justified in interpreting existence as an accident in time, an illusion, or a phenomenon, just something that's there for a while and then gone, or a freak, something abnormal. The paradox, this is perhaps what a thoughtful person can observe, the paradox of a creative thought. There's some kind of creative thought which is moving between unreal opposites. The unreality of the superconscious and the unreality of the inconscious, perhaps. What do we observe? We observe inanimate matter, matter that's not alive, which doesn't have a soul. It's just matter, unconscious matter, struggling to feel and know. It wants to become sentient and have knowledge. So at least that's what it seems to be doing, what evolution seems to be doing, struggling to feel and know. Matter, this dense, insentient stuff that just by chance has started to try to understand itself by the mind. It's what we seem to be made up of, is matter. How come that this matter has woken up enough that it wants to understand itself? This universe seems as if it might be a state of inconscience, a state where there's no consciousness, which has just by mistake, monstrously, totally abnormally, given birth to something we might call soul. Philomena.
At times all looks unreal and remote. We seem to live in a fiction of our thoughts, pieced from sensations, fanciful, the traveler's tale, or caught on the film of the recording brain, a figment of circumstance in cosmic sleep.
Somnambulist.
Somnambulist, walking under the moon, an image of ego trips through an ignorant dream.
a false perspective of effect and cause. Trusting to a specious prospect of world space, it drifts insensibly from scene to scene.
From scene to scene.
Whither it knows not, to what furthest verge.
Thank you. So this is a way that human beings, if they try to look at the universe that we are part of, no? At times everything looks unreal and remote from us, distant from us. It's as if we're living in a fiction, in a story, a made-up story that our own thoughts have made up, that we've pieced together from sensations, fanciful traveler's tale. We learn about the world that we live in through sensation, what we can feel with our senses. But he suggests that what we learn through our senses is just a fanciful tale. It's misleading, like the tales that people who traveled to distant countries, they would come back and tell fabulous stories about what they'd learned there. Perhaps they hadn't seen much like that. They were just hearing from second or third or fourth hand. They tell all kinds of amazing things. So perhaps what our senses, the information that our senses gives us, is like that. It's just a fanciful tale. It doesn't correspond to reality at all. So a fiction of our thought that we've just pieced together from what the senses tell us. Or maybe we've caught it by accident, perhaps, on a film of the recording brain. Picked it up while we were sleeping, a figment, a creation, or circumstance in the cosmic sleep. We've just picked up some dream happening. The ego, or maybe not even the ego itself, just an image of ego is treading through that ignorant dream, just like a somnambulist, somebody walking in their sleep, walking under the moon. What they're experiencing in their head is not the reality of things at all. So in the same way, an image of ego treads through an ignorant dream. We may even count the moments, we may measure the hours and the minutes, no? But that time is only spectral, it's unreal. It's not real time, it's like a spectre, a phantom, a ghost, or even an imagination. About 500 or 600 years ago, artists in the West learned to draw things in perspective, in a way that makes us feel that we can see 3D into a distance. And they became very, very clever at it. On the walls of palaces in Italy, you can see scenes painted. It looks as if you can just step out into a garden or a street. But if you try to do it, you just come up against a wall. It's just painted on a wall. So here it speaks about a false perspective. What we experience as effect and cause, this happened because of this, is a false perspective. That's not really the reason why things happen. But if we trust to that specious prospect, that misleading prospect of world space, our being can just drift incessantly, endlessly, from one scene to the next scene, not knowing where it's going, not knowing where it has come from, completely lost, not knowing to what fabulous verge, what new horizon it may be traveling. Kamala. Thank you. So these are explanations which we might give to ourselves, which human beings have given to themselves. Everything here is dreamed, or its existence is doubtful. We don't know whether it exists or not. And we have no idea who that dreamer is, who has dreamed this dream we are part of, and where he's looking from. It's still unknown. Or maybe we do make some kind of shadowy guess. We think it might be like this or like that. Or perhaps the world is real, but we are far too small. We're like ants trying to understand the Himalaya. No? The world is real, but ourselves too small, insufficient for the mightiness of our stage. It's all too big for us to grasp. No? What we seem to observe is this thin life curve, a tiny little arc of life, crossing this titan whirl of the huge universe, no? Of the orbit of a universe that seems to have no soul, to be soulless. And in the belly of that sparse, rolling mass of the physical universe, here's this little mind looking out from this small, casual globe, this globe that's perhaps only come into existence by chance. And here we are, wondering what we are and what everything is. Bhavan, would you read?
And take to some internal subjective side, the string has formed in matter's side of stuff, a point inch,
minute
of little cell, takes figure as whole being's conscious space. Such is our scene in the half-light below. This is the sign of matter's infinite. This is the weird hope of the creature shown. To science, the dentist, measure of the field. As she moves on the record of the close survey and mathematicians the huge external world, to reason, warm
speculator.
Speculator engenders one's idea. Abstractions in the void of currency. We no more invoke form, values, or space.
Let's pause there. He was talking about this mind looking out, no? And how absurd it all seems. And yet, to some interned, subjective sight that's looking within, this, where has it come from, this sight? It has formed very strangely in the blind stuff of matter. A tiny little pointillage, one little point of self begins to appear as if it is the conscious base of all world existence. If we read in Life Divine, Sri Aurobindo says something like this, that the individual who seems so meaningless if we look in proportion to the universe, perhaps actually these individual consciousnesses are the base of everything. So now he's summing it up. He's saying, this is the scene. This is what it looks like to our ignorance here. This mysterious setup is the sign of matter's infinite, the infinity of matter. This is the weird purport. It's something so strange we can't understand it, of the picture that appears to science. Science has become a kind of giant to us in our century and a half, no? She's the one who measures the field and tells us everything. She looks closely on this record of her close survey. She puts it all down in mathematical terms, this huge external world. What it shows us is something really weird, ununderstandable. Similarly to reason, if we use our reason, especially if we bind our reason to the circle of sense, we will only accept what the senses tell us. Sri Aurobindo says the reason actually can take us much further than that. But science insists that only what can be verified by our senses or the instruments we make to aid our senses, only that is acceptable as evidence. To reason, bound within the circle of sense. Or if she doesn't bind herself within the circle of sense, then there she is, as if in a huge stock exchange where there's nothing palpable, no values are firm, no? You can speculate in all kinds of vast, tenuous ideas that you almost can't grasp, abstractions in the void, abstractions, things that are just ideas. They are reason's currency. And we don't know whether they have any firm values for base or not. Alexander, would you read the next sentence?
Only religion.
A little louder, please.
Only religion in this bankruptcy presents its dubious riches to our hearts, or science and provision checks on the beyond. Our poverty, shall they have its revenge? Our spirits depart, discarding a futile life, into the blank transferred into immortality.
Yes, again, it's Sri Aurobindo's humor. Only religion. In this bankruptcy of reason and science, materialism, only religion in this bankruptcy seems to perhaps offer us something, but even what it's offering us is dubious, is doubtful. It offers something to our hearts to make us feel more satisfied. But one of the things it does is that it seems to be signing checks that we can cash in the future, but they're unprovisioned checks. There's nothing in the bank. On the beyond, when we leave this world, then we can cash our checks. Our poverty shall there have its revenge. Our spirits depart this world, discarding this futile life. And off we depart into the blank unknown. And perhaps we can take with us death's passport into immortality. In the other world, perhaps we may be immortal. So that was quite a long passage, wasn't it?
A new life dawns. He looks out from vistas wide. The Spirit's breath moves him, but soon retires. His strength was not made to hold that puissant guest. All dulls down to convention and routine, or a fierce excitement brings him vivid joys. His days are tinged with the red hue of strife, and lust's hot glare, and passion's crimson stain. Battle and murder are his tribal game. Time has he none to turn his eyes within, and look for his lost self and his dead soul. His motion on too short an axis wheels. He cannot soar, but creeps on his long road. Or if, impatient of the trudge of time, he would make a splendid haste on fate's slow road, his heart that runs soon pants and tires and sinks. Or he walks ever on and finds no end. Hardly a few can climb to greater life. All tunes to a low scale and conscious pitch. His knowledge dwells in the house of ignorance. His force nears not even once the omnipotent. Rare are his visits of heavenly ecstasy. The bliss which sleeps in things and tries to wake breaks out in him in a small joy of life. This scanty grace is his persistent stay. It lightens the burden of his many ills and reconciles him to his little world. He is satisfied with his common average kind. Tomorrow's hopes and his old rounds of thought, his old familiar interests and desires, he has made into a thick and narrowing hedge, defending his small life from the invisible. His being's kinship to infinity he has shut away from him into inmost self, fenced off the greatnesses of hidden God. His being was formed to play a trivial part in a little drama on a petty stage. In a narrow plot he has pitched his tent of life beneath the wide gaze of the starry vast. He is the crown of all that has been done. Thus is creation's labor justified. This is the world's result, nature's last poise. And if this were all, and nothing more were meant, if what now seems were the whole of what must be, if this were not a stade through which we pass on our road from matter to eternal self, to the light that made the worlds, the cause of things, well might interpret our mind's limited view existence as an accident in time, illusion or phenomenon or freak, the paradox of a creative thought which moves between unreal opposites, inanimate force struggling to feel and know, matter that chanced to read itself by mind, inconscience monstrously engendering soul. At times all looks unreal and remote. We seem to live in a fiction of our thoughts, pieced from sensation's fanciful traveller's tale, or caught on the film of the recording brain, a figment or circumstance in cosmic sleep. A somnambulist walking under the moon, an image of ego treads through an ignorant dream, counting the moments of a spectral time. in a false perspective of effect and cause, trusting to a specious prospect of world space, it drifts incessantly from scene to scene, whither it knows not, to what fabulous verge. All here is dreamed, or doubtfully exists. But who the dreamer is, and whence he looks, is still unknown, or only a shadowy guess. Or the world is real, but ourselves too small, insufficient for the mightiness of our stage. A thin, lithe curve crosses the Titan whirl of the orbit of a soulless universe, and in the belly of the sparse rolling mass a mind looks out from a small casual globe and wonders what itself and all things are. And yet, to some interned subjective sight that strangely has formed in matter's sightless stuff, a pointillage minute of little self takes figure as world being's conscious base. Such is our scene in the half-light below. This is the sign of matter's infinite. This the weird purport of the picture shown to science, the giantess, measurer of her field, as she pores on the record of her close survey and mathematizes her huge external world. To reason bound within the circle of sense, or in thought's broad impalpable exchange, a speculator in tenuous vast ideas, abstractions in the void her currency, we know not with what firm values for its base. Only religion in this bankruptcy presents its dubious riches to our hearts, or signs unprovisioned checks on the beyond. Our poverty shall there have its revenge. Our spirits depart, discarding a futile life into the blank unknown, or with them take death's passport into immortality.